All right, hi, Emmy. So yesterday in morning meeting, I started talking about grief and the stages of grief, and I wanted to make sure I was right. And so I put this together and I presented this morning. And so these are the five stages of grief. So this is what most humans experience when something bad happens: divorce, death, sickness, something just really sad, injury, a friendship ending, something like that. And so this, not everyone goes through the same stages at the same time. Sometimes we skip stuff, but more or less, this is what people go through. All right, so the very first thing that can happen is we get into something called denial. So like we just pretend it didn't happen, like it didn't exist. We don't look at it. We just ignore it. Okay, we deny that it happened. After this, if we start to process it and think about things, we move into anger. So we get angry about it happening. We're upset that this thing happened to us. We can't believe it. We get very, very angry. After we get angry for a little bit, what can happen next is we get into something called bargaining. And so bargaining is, if you look at it like a religious, so people who are religious and believe in God, sometimes they will pray to God and say, if you just cure my mom, I will never, ever again do something. Or like, if you get my parents back together, if only my parents got back together, I'll always do my homework. So there's this thing, and we do that because all of these events, sickness, death, parents divorcing, friendships ending, people moving away, we don't control any of that. And when we bargain, we're trying to take control of the situation. Because we like control. We're humans. We like to control things. But one of the keys to being a content and happy person is to understand what you can and cannot control. And so a lot of these events we cannot control. The next thing, if we're, again, progressing correctly, is sadness. If we think about something and we are sad, then that's actually a really good thing. It means that we've processed a lot of things. And we're ready for the last part, and that is acceptance and hope. So no matter what happens, as long as we come to terms with it, when we think about it, we are accepting of it, and we understand that there's still life to live, and there's still things that can get better. And I've talked about my mom before, but even thinking about that, like I'm still a very lucky person. Like my life, I don't know how my life would be different if my mom lived past to when she was, but I didn't lose hope about things. I kept living life. I thought life was still a good thing. Even though that happened. And so that's grief. Now, one of the big problems that kids and adults, human beings in general, in general, is when we should be dealing with this stuff. We can surround ourselves with distractions. So some people think that they shouldn't. They need to be happy all the time. And so they do all this stuff. They play video games. They watch videos. They look at Netflix. They talk to friends. They do all of the things except dealing with the thing that happened. And that's not good. That makes us stop. We can't get through stuff if we don't deal with it. And so don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Help people if you see them distracting themselves instead of dealing with things. And the best way to deal with stuff is to talk, like write it down, talk to people about it. But I know most kids nowadays would rather just talk to a kid about it. I would highly discourage people from doing that. And one of the reasons I say that is because that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid, right? Like that kid gives you advice, that advice is wrong, and then you blame the kid now. Like that's not very fair. And so talk to adults. Find adults that you trust. Talk to them. Because they can help, or they might be able to ask questions that can help. They might be able to find someone else who can help. So adults are a good source to go. So that was the morning meeting today. There was also a message. Sorry. So yeah, see if you can do, brain dump, active recall. What are the 5 stages of grief? I'll give you 30 seconds to say them out loud. That wasn't 30 seconds, another 10. I think. 3, 2, 1, 0. And sorry, I have to kind of slouch down because my camera's so low. I didn't bring anything to prop my thing up, but my computer has shrunk. So there they are. We have denial. Here, let me get fancy with my little laser pointer. We have denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and hope and acceptance. And then the message today was possibly the most important thing to learn is self-control. What helps a lot with self-control? Two things. One, creating an environment that actually lets you control yourself. What do I mean? The most successful people when it comes to self-control do not surround themselves with distractions or things they really would rather do. They are kind to themselves. So that's kind of like what you were talking about, having two different computers. That is good. You are having one computer that you do not play on. That helps. We're human beings. Human beings are very predictable. If there is something we want to do and we are able to do it because it's right there and it's easy, then we are probably going to do that than the thing we don't want to do. That's just how we work. So the most successful people, it's not that they can control themselves better. They've actually done research on this. The self-control thing is kind of like an illusion. It's more they set up their environment. They surround themselves with people, things like that they can be successful with. And that's number two. So real, true friends don't need attention all the time. And so, when you run into that, if you think a friend needs your attention all the time, think about maybe that's not true friendship. It's like I have friends that I haven't talked to in years, but if I call them tomorrow, they would still talk to me and be my friend. That's just kind of how things happen. All right, so how is your environment, both physical and electronic? How are your friendships? Sincerely, Mr. Light. Now, this is the morning meeting, and maybe I'll just go right into science. All right, so science. So everything actually worked. I actually and I'm sorry, I should have thought to record this, but I didn't. I forgot. And so I put food coloring. This is an picture of it. I put food coloring in each of the waters, and I wish I had a vial this small because it would have been way easier to see. And I poured salt water in, and then I poured the fresh water, and the fresh water was actually on top of the salt water. So the question is, why? So what do you think was the reason that when I poured the fresh water, so it actually worked, into the salt water, the fresh water stayed on top? So I'm going to give you a moment to make a prediction. And then we're going to move on now. So scientifically speaking, what happened to desalinate the water? Well, it all has to do with the water cycle, right? So we have water, it's been collected. Now, because of heat, it gets evaporated. It goes up into the air and cools down to condense and then comes back down in the form of precipitation. That's exactly what was happening. I can't remember if I did. No, yeah. Okay, sorry. That was exactly what was happening in our demonstration. Okay, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. First, I have a question. Where does most of the rain come from? It's the ocean. So the ocean is the source of 86% of global evaporation. So that means pretty much, I think this is what it means. I could be wrong on this. 86% of the rain. Most of the rain that we see is from the ocean. Okay, it's this enormous. There's I said it's bigger than all the land masses combined. The Pacific Ocean. I mean, not let alone ocean. That's 70% of our surface is water. And so that is most of the rain. And so if you think about rain, is rain salty? No, rain is fresh. And so that's kind of what's going on here. It's the same thing. So why do things evaporate? The sun. Thermal energy. Why does it condense? Coolness. So what's happening here? We have a heat source that, I couldn't draw water in here, I tried to, that heated up the water. The water got to a point that it was boiling, thus evaporating and getting up and caught in the aluminum. Salt was left behind because it did not get hot enough to evaporate the salt. That water then started to condense. It would have been really good if I had ice cubes to really cool down the aluminum, but it still condensed anyway because the aluminum was cool enough. And so we had condensed water that started to collect. And once it collected enough, it started to drip down into the cup, giving us fresh water. So it precipitated into the cup. So if I didn't have that cup there, it would have just been right back into salt water, and you would have just made salt water the whole time. All right. Why did the fresh water lay on top of the salt water? It has to do with density. So density is this idea of how compact something is. So we see its mass and how large it is, its volume. So we say mass divided by volume. So that means the larger the mass and the smaller the volume, the denser it is. Okay, and so fresh water, because it doesn't have that salt in there, is less dense. It has less mass than the salt water. One thing to note about mass, mass doesn't change. So weight can change because of gravity, but mass does not change. I think that was it. Yeah, that was it. There was a video that I had the kids watch about atoms, which I don't know if you watched or not, but I think you will really enjoy it, and I will send that along soon. Bye-bye.